Hello, everybody. Welcome into the NBA Front Office Show, a special weekend edition. We didn't do a Friday show because, frankly, we were completely exhausted from a week of NBA basketball. But here we are coming to you on a Saturday to break down the latest going on around the NBA. I'm Trevor Lane. You can find me on Twitter at Trevor_Lane, joined by Keith Smith at Keith Smith NBA. Keith, how about the Utah Jazz going 82-0 apparently, right?
Yeah, complete reversal, right? We all thought they were tanking, and the Jazz are like, no, we're winning the whole thing. It's like Major League, right?
That's right.
I won't repeat the actual quote, but because we like to keep it family friendly here on the Front Office Show. But yeah, I mean, you know, the Jazz, they have real NBA players. Like, it's just a question I think that we're all wondering is how long are they going to have those real NBA players? But I don't know, man. It could be like what Danny Ainge did with the Celtics. Maybe they just outsource the tank to Minnesota or Cleveland, but I don't think either one of those teams is really going to be bad. But yeah, go Jazz, I guess. I mean, good for them. We'll see if they regret these wins.
Yeah, is it good for them?
I don't know. I mean, right now I think it is. It's what it really is further proof. Players and coaches don't tank. Organizations do. Right? Like when players are out there, they're going to play hard. They're going to try to win. That's just a reality. No, there's at no point is Mike Conley coming down on a fast break and saying, we need Victor Wembanyama. Let me throw this ball into the eighth row. Right? Like that doesn't happen. Players don't do that. That is an organizational decision by either, sit guys out or trade guys or whatever. So yeah, it's, we'll find out.
There had to be a degree that it had to feel good to a degree to beat the Wolves specifically. You know what I mean? With the Gobert trade, like that had to be a factor in this. But that being said, like we know how crazy this tank race is going to get this year, and you wonder if these wins are going to come back to haunt. It feels weird to talk about it that way, but if these wins,
especially if two games into the season,
yeah, can they survive the wins in the first two games of the season? Yeah, right? I don't know. We'll have to wait and find out.
Yeah. I mean, I don't want to go too far because like if we were having this conversation early last year, we would have been like, well, I guess the Wizards are going to be title contenders.
Right.
Yep. It all went sideways on them. But yeah, if they finish like fourth or fifth in the lottery because by a win or two, yeah, you're probably like, man, why did we win those two games to open the year? Like, what were we doing? But I mean, they keep winning games. Like, then it's like, all right, I guess we'll make a playoff run here. So, yeah, I'm very curious to see what happens too.
Speaking of which, the Wizards are also 2-0. So go ahead and start booking that championship parade for them as well.
Washington, Utah finals, man, everyone's gonna love it.
That's right. Adam Silver's got to be excited. Speaking of Adam Silver. He has apparently put teams on notice about tanking. The NBA is keeping an eye on things in regards to the Victor Wembanyama sweepstakes that we think is going to be a storyline all season long, particularly looking at the teams at the bottom of each conference. But what can they really do here? I mean, I guess you could try to stop teams from just outright sitting players, but they're trying to put teams on notice about tanking. They already flattened out the lottery odds to try to prevent this. And with this kind of potentially, teams are seeing Victor Wembanyama, and with good reason, as a generational talent. With that being what's out there, I don't fault teams that much for doing what they need to do in order to give themselves the best shot of landing him.
Yeah, and I don't think Adam Silver does either. He said he understands why team. Now, he did not name Victor Wembanyama, but he did say, I understand why teams would tank when there's a once-in-a-generation player about to enter the league, which obviously Wembanyama is. But he said it's a serious issue that has sparked hundreds of meetings. Now, let's be clear what this environment was. He was speaking with employees of the Phoenix Suns. He went there to basically issue an apology from himself and the NBA as a league for basically not doing anything about Robert Sarver earlier. But then that turned into a full like, hey, let's do like a town hall session with these employees. And one of the questions that came up was, what do we do about tanking? And yeah, his quote was, we put teams on notice. We're going to be paying particular attention to the issue this year. To your point, what do you do? Like, it's not really, I mean, we've already got the fines in place, right, for sitting guys and those kind of things, but I don't know what else you do with that. Now, What he did say was considered that, as you and I, right, we both enjoy Premier League
Mhm.
soccer. He said, let me find the quote. The league has thought about relegation as a potential solution to ensure the worst performing teams are incentivized to compete. If you're watching this and you don't know what relegation is, basically in many soccer leagues around the world, the top teams from the second division win their way into a spot in the first division, and the bottom teams in the first division move down to the second division. And every year, it's a right teams at the very top of the league are competing to win the league, and the teams at the bottom are competing to not be relegated. So what would
Mhm.
happen is the worst two NBA teams would go to the G League in theory in this model, and the two best teams in the G League would come to the NBA. Adam Silver said it's too disruptive to our business model. G League teams would not be equipped to compete in the NBA. You also, the fact, as you pointed out very astutely when we're off air, the owners would be like, "Oh crap!" like
Yeah.
I'm not going from playing the Lakers and Knicks and Chicago Bulls to playing the Grand Rapids Gold and the
Right.
Lakeland Magic and those kind of things. Yeah, it would be
It'd be a
but
disaster.
the fact that it's even been broached says to me maybe they are looking at more things to solve tanking beyond just the flattened lottery odds. We'll see, but yeah, it was I that's the first time I've ever heard at Adam Silver's level even broach the possibility of relegation being a thing.
The loss of revenue for a team that got relegated would be
Yeah,
massive.
massive.
You
Yep.
go from playing in an NBA arena to playing in a G League arena. You go from playing NBA teams to G League teams. It's just the G League is becoming a bigger and bigger thing, and it's great. I think it's been a
Mhm.
great thing for the sport. It's not at the level where you can do
No.
this. As you mentioned, it's not even for the top G League teams. You can't just throw
Yeah.
them into the NBA and say, "Here you go." That will not work out well either. But for to tell an NBA owner, "Hey, you just paid $3.5 billion
Yeah.
or whatever to get this team. And now you're going to suffer massive, massive losses because you're no longer going to be on televised games. You're no longer going to be
Yeah.
in big arenas. Instead, you're going to be playing G League teams. That it will not fly. Owners would
No,
absolutely freak out.
this would take years of overhauling the entire system of both the NBA and the G League. In the Premier League, teams that are in the second division sometimes are still they're some of the richest, most well-supported clubs in the world. They just maybe fell into hard times and everything went sideways on them. And often they're only down in the second division for a year or two,
Right.
and then they play their way back up. And there tends to be a group of, in my experience, watching it and reading about it and all those things, there's like 6 to 8 teams every year that are kind of up and down, up and down.
Sure.
They're always on the borderline of relegation and promotion. But yeah, it's a absolutely wild thought to think through. But what the other problem is, so let's say, Team X tanks and says, fine, relegate us. We still get Victor Wembanyama. Do we want Wembanyama's first league
Exactly.
here in the pros be playing in the G League where it's not even on TV and those kind of things on a regular basis? Yeah, it's one of those things that sounds awesome in theory. It's I guarantee you in my lifetime at least, I'm probably going to live shorter than you will because I don't take as good a care of myself as you do. But I'll even say in your lifetime, we're never going to see this.
It's not going to
There's
happen.
just too much money at the very highest levels of pro sports, and in our league structures in the United States and Canada, North American pro sports are not set up to support this kind of relegation and promotion structure.
It's interesting that they would consider going to these lengths in order to combat tanking. When I think that the play-in system and the flattened lottery odds have kind of done their job. You're not seeing 10 teams tanking each season or anything
Mhm.
like that. You're seeing teams more often than not make a push to go and get into the play-in tournament. I think it's done its job. I don't think tanking is as big of an issue as it was 5 years ago,
Yeah.
but I just think this would be an extreme. And then think about the scenario because the NBA has so much based their business model on stars, right? On like we're not marketing Lakers versus Nets. We're marketing LeBron versus Kevin Durant, right? Like that's the way it's going. Okay, what if one of those star players, those top tier guys, spends the season being injured, as we see happen
Mhm.
sometimes? That team bottoms out. Next thing you know, hey, LeBron's not on TV anymore.
Yep.
Like that, it's not like we said. I
Yeah.
don't want to beat a dead horse.
Yeah.
It's not
Yeah.
going to happen,
You're
but
all over it.
yeah.
Yeah.
Um,
Yeah.
that said,
Let's go to the other thing he talked about.
expansion
Yeah.
still coming.
It's coming. It's 100%. When the commissioner is openly saying, we're going to look at it and puts a loose-ish timeline to it, it's coming. We all know it. Just start preparing yourself now. There's going to be 32 NBA teams within the next, probably, I'll say, on the court, 5 to 6 years probably. Basically same forum with Phoenix Suns employees. Adam Silver was asked about expansion, and he said, let me find it. Basically, he's not worried about the dilution of talent because he thinks there is so many good players. But he did say it's something they have to factor in. They want to have 30 competitive teams, not 20. He has said that repeatedly. That is the goal, right? 30 strong franchises. But he did say after they're done negotiating their next TV rights deal, it is expires in 24-25, but those negotiations have already begun. So that's going to happen, probably be done being negotiated, I'm guessing, within a year from now. And then they'll play it out, and then it'll go into effect with the 25-26 season. Then we're going to, broach the expansion topic. And that's why I'm putting that, let's call it a 5-6 year window, because they'll announce expansion, then it'll turn into probably a year or two before we actually see those teams, on the court actually playing in games.
Yeah, even once they award a franchise to a specific city, and right now the heavy favorites have got to be Las Vegas and Seattle.
Mm-hmm.
But even after they award those franchises to those cities, it takes a season or two before they can for them to ramp everything. You have to, I mean, the hiring process of just personnel to run the team, and there's so much involved in that. It takes a little while to get the team up and running. So it's not like we're saying, hey, next season, 2 new teams. It's going to take a little while, but it does sound like it's going to happen. Then we can get into an expansion draft and all that kind of talk too.
Yeah, we need to keep Front Office Show running at least through that, because that's going to be a content machine for us. We can do mock protected lists and mock expansion drafts and all sorts of fun stuff. I've been wanting expansion to happen selfishly, for just that part of it. Like, I want to be covering the league, during an expansion period. But I also, it's time. It's just time. I was going around, and I've checked in the last couple of full games, Wednesday and Friday night, full schedules, checking in on all these different teams. And I'm like, there's so much talent in the league right now. Like, the league's as deep as it's ever been, I think, in talent. Like, we're ready for there to be teams. Does that mean teams are going to come right in and be awesome? No, probably not. Expansion teams aren't supposed to be. It's supposed to be bad for a couple years. But yeah, I think we're looking forward to expansion coming. I'm gonna, like I said, next 5 or 6 years, I think we've got 2 new teams.
Agreed. All right, let's move on to your team for a moment here. Al Horford going to be sitting out the second night of a back-to-back. Is that the plan for the season? Is that just a, hey, we're ramping things up early on type of thing? What's that decision looking like?
Yeah, the Celtics were asked about this, and this was a few days ago, knowing they were going into this back-to-backs at Miami and Orlando, and they said there's not really a plan to do it, but that Al Horford would not play both halves of back-to-backs all year long like he did last year. Now, it's important to know last year he's coming off basically a half year off. So, because he didn't play that second half of his time with Oklahoma City. So I think they're just being cautious. I think they're officially saying he has low back stiffness or soreness. It's really a rest night. They just don't want to call it that. And I think they're looking at it saying, hey, this is a chance to get some other guys out there, some different bigs. So let's get them in the lineups and go against Orlando. We should still have enough to win. We'll see. The Magic play those sometimes 4 big lineups that they've shown off here a little bit. So we'll see what comes of it. But yeah, my guess is we don't see Horford play very many back-to-backs. Maybe if the first night it's a blowout, he can get out in like 20 minutes. Maybe we'll see him play a second one. Mm-hmm. But it's probably more likely we see him sitting out that second night more often than not.
Yeah, and I think that's going to make sense, especially with the long term goal of trying to win a championship. You need to try to keep
Hmm.
Al Horford healthy. He was so instrumental for them in the playoffs. He was absolutely incredible, and so they're going to need to get more of
Big
that
time.
out of him
Yep.
for this coming season. But uh, now let's pause for a moment for a word from our sponsor, which is BetterHelp. You know what? Like therapy is becoming a much more accepted thing around the sports world as well as around the world in general. There isn't this negative stigma around it. In fact, it's being revealed that it can be a very, very helpful thing for a lot of people. It can really help, particularly with problem solving. I think that's where you see it quite a bit in the sports world is how can we make a situation go better by having a different mindset. So a therapist, what it can do is help you become a better problem solver. It makes it easier to accomplish your goals, no matter how big or small they are. So you can take some things that are working in the sports world, apply them to your life through something like better help. So you can get improved emotional healing, help with anxiety, depression, de-stress your life, remove some stress from your life by being able to talk things out with someone. It can be a very important and very beneficial thing for people in their lives. So if you're thinking of giving therapy a try, BetterHelp is a great, great option. You get matched with a therapist after filling out a brief survey, and you can switch therapists at every time. And here's what I really love: it's very convenient and accessible because it's all online. And I think for me personally, like that would be one of my bigger hurdles is having to go and meet with someone in person. Even doing what I do now, I would feel a little bit nervous. I'd feel a little bit uneasy about being I think having that kind of separation of it being online actually helps. It lowers the barrier to get into something like that. So I think that is nice. And in addition to, of course, the convenience of being able to do that just from your home, but having it be online, I think makes it that much more of an option for people. It makes it that much less uncomfortable for people to go through. So at least that's the way I would see it. I know there's other people out there who probably feel the way that I do. So when you want to be a better problem solver, therapy can get you there. Visit betterhelp.com/front office today to get a 10% discount on your first month. That's betterhelp.com/front office. All right, Keith, let's talk a little bit about the G League draft, which took place today. Everybody knows this, right? Everybody was paying attention to the G
And
League
yeah,
draft, obviously. We had our
well
big
then,
G League draft party, of course, that
yep.
everybody attended. It was fantastic.
The G League
Sam,
mock drafts we did where
that
my biggest takeaway, I can't believe we were perfect. Like we nailed every single
we
pick.
every
It
single
was
pick, we
unbelievable.
got them
Yeah,
all. We got
yeah,
our Woj on, and we
yeah.
spoiled every pick
That's it. You
before
guys
it
just
came out. It
missed
was
out, I guess.
yeah, it was amazing.
Oh, that was just our own private text stream. Whoops.
Next year, we'll make the G
Next
League
year.
draft
Next year.
public.
Yeah.
But Sam Merrill was the top pick, who was one of the final cuts for the Sacramento Kings. He winds up going number one overall. Again, the G League becoming a more and more important part of NBA roster building. Do you have any thoughts on Sam Merrill or the G League draft in general?
Yeah, the G League draft's a little bit of a different process because some people are like, wasn't Sam Merrill in the NBA for a couple of years? Yeah, you're absolutely right. He was. But the challenge with the G League draft, or just the difference, I guess, not really a challenge, differences. One is players sign with the G League and then they're allocated to a team. And one of the ways you can be allocated is if you haven't played previously as a non assigned player in the G League, you can sign with the league and be draft eligible, and then teams will draft you. So Sam Merrill was the top overall pick. The number 2 pick was Joe Wieskamp, who had played for the Spurs. He went to the Wisconsin Herd. Merrill went to the Cleveland Charge. And then what you see often, I know we just saw the Lakers G League team, South Bay, just acquired the returning player rights to Devin Kennedy from the Orlando Magic's G League team, the Lakeland Magic. So often we'll see teams say, hey, we want to get you in our system, or you were in camp with us, so they'll trade for the G League rights and those kind of things. So stuff just gets a little different in the G League. My recommendation is don't get too attached to any of this because a lot of
Right.
these rosters change very, very rapidly. But you can look it all up. It's all out there now. A lot of the teams, I know the main Celtics have already released, here's what our G League training camp roster is. They're going to be in training camp for about the next week or so. Teams play a couple. I think they call them scrimmages and not actually preseason games, but they'll play those. And then the G League season starts in early November. Where it really matters, probably for most fans' concerns, is when the G League season tips off, the 50-game clock for G League players also starts, or two-way players, I should say. So the two-way players who are with NBA teams and the G League team, they can only play in 50 NBA games. Before the season starts, those games don't really count. After the season ends, those games don't count towards that 50. But when the G League season starts, that 50-game clock starts. So that'll be something occasionally be tracking and things like that. Hey, two-way player X, and if they really turn out to be something they pop, that's when you tend to see teams say, "Oh, well, we got to convert them." And this year, much like it normally is, non-pandemic impacted years, G League players are not playoff eligible and those kind of things as well.
I think to give you an idea of the way the G League draft is, you look at the second round of the G League draft, and there were a number of teams. In fact, the fifth pick in the second round, it came time to pick, and the answer was pass.
Yeah.
They didn't, and this actually, if you follow the MLS, this happens in the MLS as well, where it comes time for a team to draft, and they just go, "No, thank you."
Yep.
That happens in the G League as well. You get to a certain point where they're just like, you know what, we've got our guys that we're looking at, and there's nobody that we really want to take, and so you wind up having teams actually pass on draft picks, which of course you never see happen in the NBA.
Yeah, I mean, to give you another thing, Norris Cole. Remember Norris Cole? Played with the LeBron Heat when they were very, very good. He was the 19th selection of the second round. So it just gives you a sense of, sometimes weird guys get drafted, other times they don't. Sometimes when those teams pass, it's because they already have a full roster of returning players or guys who have already kind of been on the team and those kind of things. So yeah, it does not it's filled often with recognizable names, but not always the players that you're like, wow, this guy's amazing. More often it's like, hey, I remember him, or I remember that guy. So yeah, there's quite a few like who's the other one? Rashard Vaughn, remember him? Guard, played for the Bucks and a couple other teams. He got drafted in the G League today as well. So yeah, so that's the kind of stuff you see in the G League draft.
All right, back to the NBA and back into action. We've got our guy, Zach LaVine.
Well done. Well done.
Weekend update. Help myself. Weekend update
gets silly. Love it.
Zach LaVine back in action for the Chicago Bulls and no minutes restriction on him. This is great news. I was getting a little bit concerned there that he was missing the beginning part of the season, dealing with knee issues, but now he is back in action and no minutes restriction tells you that the Bulls feel pretty good about where he's at physically.
Yeah, that part I'm a little less feeling great about, but it is what it is, right? Billy Donovan did say like playing 38 minutes or more, I think was what his own kind of quote would not be ideal. So my guess is there is a very loose minutes restriction. It's probably, but I don't think sometimes this does happen. Sometimes you see it's usually a trainer or an assistant coach. They'll put them on like kind of the clock watch of, hey, it's 20 minutes. It does not go over 20 minutes. Like at 20 minutes, you got to get them out. And we've even seen it happens less. So, but we've even seen teams do take fouls, to get a guy out of a game because they've hit their minutes limit and those kind of things. Not transition take fouls because that would come with a free throw now. But,
that's right.
But yeah, just where it's like, hey, wrap that guy up so we can get him out. But yeah, it's my guess is this is probably a little more. Hey, let's try to keep him around 32 to 35.
Yeah, it's not a minutes restriction as in he can only play 20 minutes or something like that. It might be a range, but it doesn't sound like that range is going to be less than he would typically play in a game. Like you would normally shoot for like a 32 to 35 minute game for a guy like Zach LaVine. So it sounds like that's what it is. And just, hey, if we happen to go into OT or double overtime, we're hey, let's not push it.
Exactly. Yeah. They're I think they are basically just trying to not beat him up too quick in his return here. And honestly, it's the right thing to do. You're already without Lonzo Ball. You gotta keep him going.
All right. We also are getting a debut from Keegan Murray, who's out of health and
Hey.
safety protocols, gets to play for the Sacramento Kings. He is a lot of people's favorite to win the Rookie of the Year award. It wasn't our pick, but I have had a number of people say that Keegan Murray is certainly a guy to watch. He was the Summer League MVP, has looked very good for the Kings, and we finally get to see him in action tonight. So that's exciting.
Yeah, not to go all Victor Wembanyama, but if Paulo Banchero had never been born, Keegan Murray would have been my pick probably when Rookie of the Year. But such as it is, and Banchero is off to a pretty good start. But yeah, psyched to see Keegan Murray back, or I guess out there for the first time for real. Is that tonight? Yeah, tonight against the Clippers. So Saturday night as we're recording this. So probably by the time some of you hear this, I've already played. So go see how he did.
That's right. That's right. Should be exciting. All right. That about wraps things up for this weekend. A lot of NBA action going on. We've got tons of basketball to watch. Gosh, I love it. I love that like every night there's games and more games and more games. It's absolutely fantastic. Welcome back, NBA. It's been a lot of fun.
Now we're into the weekends. We get
right.
a couple early tips worked in there on the weekends. I never understood why the NBA always does early Sunday games while football season's still going on. But
I'm living that life. For the Lakers are playing the Blazers.
Yeah,
the
like
middle of the day tomorrow, and I'm
yeah.
like, there's a ton of football games on that I would like to watch then too, but obviously that's not going to happen.
Well, it's me, my friend. Tonight we get a ALCS game 3 happening. It's both first pitch is about to come as we're going to top off here, and then I've got the Celtics game tonight. So I'll have the 2 TVs,
multiple screens. Yep, that's
it.
That is the answer.
Yep,
that's the answer. All right, everybody. Thank you for joining us. Make sure you do subscribe to the NBA Front Office YouTube channel and go find us over on Apple Podcasts, Spotify, wherever it is that you listen to podcasts. Till next time, stay safe and see you.